On Monday Night Football, we've got two big games this week, because what's better than one? Well, two is. Welcome back or welcome to America's Sports. I have what you could consider an addiction to NFL football. I love watching all the games back and all of the big plays, all the big highlights. I love crunching the numbers, figuring out which numbers mean something and which numbers are skewed. And I love presenting all of this to you guys. No big corporation money behind me. Obviously, I do it all myself, and I take a lot of pride in getting it right more than those guys who do have that luxury. If you also have the same addiction as me, this place is right for you at America's Sports. Now, I'll shut the hell up now so we can get into the preview. Let's go. Both of these games are big for all of the teams involved. We've got two games at once on Monday Night Football. The first one starting at 7:30 p.m. EST. We got the Jags at the Bills. The 0-2 Jacksonville Jaguars travel to Buffalo to take on the 2-0 Bills. Buffalo is -5 at home with the over-under sitting at 45.5. By the time this game kicks off, it's going to be in the lower 60s and it's probably going to rain. It's more than likely to. Cloudy with about 20-mile-per-hour winds. Going into this, you would probably assume that Josh Allen has beaten Trevor Lawrence, but no, he has not beaten Trevor Lawrence yet. Lawrence is 2-0 against Josh Allen's Buffalo Bills. Bills are 1-0 at home. Jacksonville is 0-1 on the road. Out of all 32 teams, the Jacksonville Jaguars seem to be the quietest in terms of noise made, at least amongst the mainstream media. Through two games, they have lost by an average of 4 points per game. In week one in Miami, by all accounts, they probably should have won that game, but Travis Etienne fumbles in the end zone. It would not have sealed the game, but it would have made it a lot harder for Miami to make their comeback. And against Cleveland, they were held to just 13 points. One thing that can be said right away between the two teams is Buffalo has been a much better offensive team. Yes, Tua got injured against you in week 2, and then week 1 you played against Arizona, but as we might be starting to learn, Arizona might not be so bad this year. Doesn't matter because either way, the Buffalo Bills are scoring 32.5 points per game while Jacksonville is sitting at 15 points per game. Yeah, they're more than doubling up the Jaguars in points per game. Then on defense, they're both giving up 19 points per game, which is in the top 10 so far. The Bills give up about 29 more rushing yards per game, but the Jags give up about 67 more passing yards through the air, so the Jags have given up more yards to this point as well. Only Jacksonville and Cleveland have no takeaways yet, so Buffalo gets the nod at defense as well. Buffalo is tied for 4th in total takeaways. Nothing to me is spelling a win for Jacksonville so far. Now let's take a look at the injuries. Evan Ingram is slated to miss his 2nd game in a row. Of course he is, because, I have him in one of my fantasy leagues. Running back Travis Etienne's backup Tanks Bigsby is also questionable. I think he's going to end up playing, but that's something to monitor. Ernest Johnson will fill in for Bigsby if he cannot play. As for Buffalo, their injuries are in the defense. Terrell Bernard and Taron Johnson, who we kind of knew if you watched the Miami game last week, we kind of already knew those two. So that pretty much does it there. Let's go ahead and look at the props. And we'll start with the rushing props. Josh Allen is at 30.5 yards over under. In week 2, they were on a short week. They played on Thursday night against Miami. And luckily, they didn't need Allen to run it. So with the hand injury, they played it safe and he really didn't run. He didn't do a whole lot because James Cook just took the fuck off. They may not need him to run a bunch in this one either. It'll be interesting to see how they do. I'm sure now that he's had some extra time that he's doing much better with that hand injury. I like Travis Etienne's over 49.5 rushing yards. For me, for my liking, I don't think they use Etienne enough. And if they want to beat Buffalo, they're going to have to use Etienne in the rush in the pass game. But for receiving yards, Etienne is also at 21.5, and I like that. Etienne's going to have a big day for them to stay close and win this. Brian Thomas's over-under is at 42.5, and he's averaging 70 yards a game right now, so I could be comfortable with that one too. Also keep in mind that even after playing a team like Cleveland, Jacksonville still gives up the 3rd most passing yards at 245.5. James Cook's over on the receiving yards has worked out the first 2 weeks. He averages 24.5 receiving yards a game, and Buffalo's going to throw it after knowing what Jacksonville gives up in the pass. Passing yards over under is 223.5 for Trevor Lawrence and 230.5 for Josh Allen. I'm staying off both of these guys just because I haven't seen them go over that yet. Both of them don't average 200 passing yards a game yet, and it's kind of been slow for passers over the first 2 weeks of NFL football. So the verdict is for this one, this is how I think the game is going to go. I think it's going to start off slow, but Buffalo punches first. Jacksonville answers back in the first half, but eventually Buffalo overwhelms them and it becomes too much for this Jacksonville defense to handle. I like Buffalo to win, and I also like them to cover this. I'm looking somewhere in the 30-14 or 30-17, maybe 27-17, but I'm going to go with under because in prime time, as you guys know if you've been watching me, the under is king until proven otherwise. Our second Monday Night Football game starts at 8:15 p.m. EST, where the 1-1 Commanders go and take on the Cincinnati Bengals, who are 0-2. The Bengals, however, are favored by 7.5 points with the over-under at 47.5. We've got kind of the LSU Bowl going here with Jaden Daniels versus Joe Burrow, and I can't wait to see this. Washington, man. You got a quarterback. How cool is that? I'm really happy for you guys. The weather for this one is going to be kind of similar to what it is in Buffalo, although it's going to be a little bit better temperature-wise. It'll be about 68 degrees, but we've got a chance of thunderstorms and a rain. They got a less of a chance, but we're still looking at a 65% probability. Yeah, it's a brand new season, but I go into this remembering that the Bengals in 2023 were undefeated 5-0 against the NFC opponents. That means the Rams, that means the Cardinals, Seattle, San Fran, and Minnesota. One thing that stands out to me at a glance has been the difference in defense. Now, the Bengals hasn't been the best defense in the world, but the Commanders are giving up 27.5 points per game, and one of those teams they played were the Giants. They also give up about 60 more yards per game than the Bengals do. Biggest difference here on defense, though, is the passing game. Bengals give up the second fewest, and one of those teams they played was the Kansas City Chiefs at 128.5 passing yards per game, while the Commanders give up about 100 more at 227.5 passing yards per game. Commanders, though, give up about 40 less yards per game on the ground. So that's where the Commanders do have the Bengals at, is in stopping the run so far. So after looking at these numbers, I think it's pretty easy to assume that Joe Burrow is going to have a pretty big day passing the ball. And then for Washington, you name it, they're going to be good at rushing. Brian Robinson, Eckler, Jaden Daniels. It's about if Cincinnati can stop the run and if Washington can stop the pass. When we look at the injury report, newly added to the team this offseason, Sheldon Rankins is ruled out after having a hamstring issue, and the other defensive tackle, B.J. Hill, is doubtful to play. The Bengals' defensive line is already really thinning out. Myles Murphy has been on the IR to start the season. The good news is that their second-round draft pick, Chris Jenkins, has been practicing, and he's questionable to play on Monday night. Because he was a full participant, though, I'm expecting him to give it a shot, even if it's in a limited capacity. And for the Bengals, a good thing on offense has happened, as T. Higgins is ready to play. He feels 100%. He's ready to go. The Commanders also have a defensive lineman out. They have their defensive end in Farrell out. That's big, as Farrell is probably off to the best start of his career, and he may end up with the most sacks of his career if he stays healthy. Now let's get into the props. The passing yards over-under for Burrow is 263.5, while for Jaden Daniels it is 196.5. The rookie quarterbacks have not passed for a passing touchdown. Now, I think this weekend that'll change, but I wouldn't be super confident in it being Jaden Daniels. I would say Caleb Williams probably has the best shot. So, receiving yards over-under, I like Mike Gesicki, and I also like Ertz. Over 26.5 for Ertz, 27.5 for Gesicki. I like both of them. Eckler's been their best receiver so far. Zach Ertz right behind him. Terry McLaurin really hasn't gotten that involved in the Washington offense yet, and I think he's going to find himself in another problem this week because Cam Taylor-Britt will be all over him. For rushing props, I'd like Zach Moss to get an anytime touchdown, and I think Jamar Chase finds the end zone as well. I like Brian Robinson Jr. to go over 54.5 rushing yards. That's probably my third favorite. My favorite is Jamar Chase anytime touchdown, Zach Moss anytime touchdown, and Brian Robinson Jr. to go over that 52.5 yards. Daniels, however, does have 132 rushing yards on the ground and 2 rushing touchdowns. So, yeah, they're going to run the football. So that's what it comes down to for this game. Can Cincinnati stop Washington's rush game? And can Washington stop Cincinnati's passing? The Washington defense has no interceptions yet, but the Bengals have the most fumbles lost so far. with 3 total. 2 of them were Burrow. 1 was Gesicki, who the NFL said that shouldn't have been called a fumble. Burrow has fumbled twice, but he hasn't thrown any interceptions yet, and I'm going to say that continues with no interceptions. I'm definitely going under in this game. You guys probably already knew I was going to say that. And I've got the Bengals winning but not covering. I'm looking at a 26-20 Bengals victory. But what do you guys think about it? Let me know in the comment section below. And that's going to do it for this one. You guys will catch me in the next one, which will not be next week. I will be in vacation. But the week after that, we got plenty more videos.